Hey ladies, Cynthia right here. How's it going? I'm here with our friend Cheryl Shepherd. So she is actually part of our Ageless Body Blueprint group. And if you're watching this outside of the Ageless Body Blueprint, we're a group of women who are focused on wellness and well-being, really for reversing the aging process and learning better ways to take care of ourselves as we age and slow down the process so we can live our best life as we go along in our future. Essentially, to live out the life that God has for us, the calling He has for us, and to do it with vibrance and energy and vitality and joy and all those things. So, anyway, so I want to welcome Cheryl with us today. Her and I have been chatting over, I don't know, past probably few couple of years, really, but more recently over the past couple of weeks, she was sharing with me some of the information that she's learning through her job and her work, passion too. And I really thought it would be such a great tie-in to what we're doing as a group together in our community. And since she is part of our Ageless Body Blueprint course group, she gets both sides. So what she's doing, and then also what we're doing together as a group, and then also the mission and vision I have for all of you ladies and in the program that I'm offering you. So, as you know, I love research and I love learning, and I have such a curious mind. And I wanted to kind of dig into Cheryl's mind today so she can share with you all of the cool discoveries she has. And in particular, I wanted her to share about how to write a letter to yourself and writing a letter to yourself, not just writing a letter to write a letter, but also allowing it to shape or even to put ahead the vision for yourself that you want in your life. Like, what are your dreams? What are your ideals? What are the things that you really want to see yourself as, or what is God putting on your heart as far as what his vision is for you? And then putting it into words, writing it on paper. In the past in groups, I've talked about placing your order. God says, he told me, if you want something specific, place your order. Like, I'm ready, I'm willing, just tell me what you want. So that we can match up our desire with his vision for our life and create that by writing ourselves a letter. So, anyway, hey, Cheryl, how's it going?
Hi.
Good. All right. So she was mentioning to me that she works for a company called Balanced Work Life, and that you do, did I write down anal, what did I write?
It's psychometrics.
Debriefing.
Psycho.
Psychometric. That's the word I was
Yep.
writing.
Yep.
Psychometric debriefing, and then also she's doing a training to become a mental health responder, which is really cool. So I'm sure there's more to all of this than I'm describing, but I'll let you kind of share. So tell us a little bit about what you do currently, and then we'll dive into the how to write a letter to yourself and the power behind that.
Okay. Well, psychometrics debriefing is just it's a newer branch of psychology that deals with um, just finding out where you are with things like assessments. So most people have taken some kind of assessments. The one that's probably the most popular is the DISC assessment. And also EQ is another thing that has become very, very important as of late. And so basically what I do is I do debriefings for these types of assessments, and it has become kind of really my passion because it's so interesting. And especially in the world we're living in right now, it's so important to know ourselves and to not only know ourselves, but to be able to understand other people in order to, you know,
Mm.
relate and interact with people.
Yeah, that's huge. I know, like, I remember one time I was working with a therapist years ago, and I used to work in eating disorders treatment. And she was saying, if we were on the moon by ourselves, we wouldn't have any issues with other people because it'd just be issues with ourselves, but we
Yeah.
wouldn't have to have counseling and things like that. But it's how to deal with other people, not just deal with them, but learning how to connect with people or how to help build a relationship with somebody when you truly understand them, than judging or, you know,
Mhm.
so on.
That's
So,
something that is said frequently with some of the team members I work
hmm.
with, that the assessment, the whole assessment business and taking the assessments and learning about yourself, which I know we went through the EQ together assessment.
Mm-hmm.
It's all just fun until you merge with another human being. And then at that point, it becomes valuable.
Yeah, that's true. I know that changes everything. Yeah, that's really neat. Okay. So then so you're doing EQ. So can you tell us what EQ is?
So EQ is it's emotional intelligence is basically what it is. And why it's important, excuse me, why it's important is because of just like what we're saying, the interpersonal relationships. So EQ deals with self-awareness, self-regulation,
Hmm.
empathy, goal setting and motivation, and relationship management. So those are kind of the basics of EQ.
Okay.
And then, I can talk a little bit about tying into kind of some of the other things that we're looking at,
Sure.
if you want me to go there now.
Sure. Yeah.
So I was mentioning to Cynthia when I graduated from high school, um, they had us write a letter to ourselves, to our future self,
Mm.
in 10 years, and they said that they would mail us that letter. And of course, we all had forgotten all about it. And then 10 years later, my letter showed up,
Wow.
and I spent a good portion of time really reevaluating, from what I had written in that letter, evaluating myself, where I was, um, cried a lot
Mm.
just based on kind of looking at the difference between where I had been and what my future was looking like at that time.
Mhm.
And that was kind of like a first light bulb moment that really piqued my interest in, and really understanding how important it is to think about our future self as opposed to just being in the moment. I know that being in the moment and being present is really important, but it's also very important to have a picture of who we
Mm.
are in the future. And
Mhm.
so that kind of started my interest. I then read the book. It was by Dr. Benjamin Hardy, and it's called Be Your Future Self Now.
Mm.
And that kind of rekindled that desire to learn more about that. And really, his book focuses on how we have to create everything mentally before we achieve it
Mm.
physically. Everything is created mentally before it's achieved physically.
Mhm.
Um, and so to visualize and articulate our future self, you have to start with setting a mindset to grow in that way. And
Mm.
it's so important because the future basically pulls you forward,
Mhm.
and you move towards what you think about, which I've heard you talk about that quite a bit.
Mhm.
And it's so true. And it's a very basic principle that we
Mhm.
don't think much about. But he had talked in his book about Mr. Beast. Have you heard of him?
Yes. Uh-huh.
Yeah. So he started out with the whole video thing, and he did his video to his future self, and it was part of his huge success. It kind of was what catapulted him into success in his video. So I highly recommend the book. The book is amazing. So it's
So what was the title again? It was,
so the book is Be Your Future Self Now,
that's
and it's
right. Okay.
Dr. Benjamin Hardy.
Okay. I'll share that too. Um, so okay, I guess what my next question is kind of a natural thing that some women may be wondering, or to anybody watching this is, so let's talk about like the biblical implication or the God part of this. So a lot of times there's a disconnect between new age principles or just think yourself better or healthier and
Right.
what God has, right? So I like to always kind of bridge the gap in understanding that God is how God is in it
Mhm.
compared to me just thinking, oh, I'm just going to think myself and rich or whatever, like that book,
Yeah.
or I'm going to think myself well. So
Yeah.
I have a lot of ideas swirling, but I want to hear from your perspective. So
Yeah, it
how was God put into this, or what?
made me think about
Mhm.
Tony Robbins, how he says that you can't just say there's no weeds in my garden, there's no weeds in my garden, and have it be true. So, but even more so, yeah, putting biblical principles along with this is, it doesn't just add another element to it. It is the basic of it. It's the essence of it because we were created by God. And so who knows better what we need than, our Father.
Right.
So, I think that my favorite scripture probably that really uh, talks about this is Proverbs 29:18,
Mhm.
where there is no vision, people perish. My people.
Mm.
So, that's pretty, it's pretty significant
Mhm.
and almost a bit harsh when you think about it. It's like not having a vision for your future
Mhm.
leads to death, basically.
Mm.
With death of the soul, death of um, our emotional well-being. And So to me, that's something that's, pretty significant. Um, as far as this, when it relates to writing this letter, I think writing a letter to your future self, kind of talking about where you are right now, but looking toward the future and what you want for yourself. It's really a vision of personal growth, but also decision making,
Mm,
life accomplishments. It takes everything all into one. And
mhm,
of course, we've talked a lot about health and nutrition and, what are we doing now, but not, and I mean, the age where I am right now, it's changed significantly from when I was younger. And okay, I just need to be skinny because I'm going on vacation, or, I have a hot date or whatever.
yeah.
Now it's like, I want to be here for my grandchildren, and I want to make good decisions for my health now
Mhm,
that are going to affect me in my future. So
mhm,
it's all a part of that, as far as what what we want to tell our future selves 10 years, 20 years
mm,
down the line,
mhm,
is what we're going to start, be thinking of daily, and then
mhm.
start moving towards.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was just thinking about the Bible verse, do not be conformed by this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind.
Yep.
I know in the Bible is full of vision. Like God gives visions all over, but a lot of in the Old Testament so that people would have a plan or at least an idea of what God is wanting to do in their life. And then fulfilling that vision is the ultimate idea. And then one vision at a time. So yeah, to be transformed by the renewing of your mind and how God created our bodies to self heal. So, same thing, if you're speaking negatively to yourself, like, oh, I can't do anything right, or I always mess up, or whatever it happens to be, shaming your body, I can't believe I look this way,
Right.
whatever, your body's listening, right? And that's part of the system that God put in us. And so, as humans, we err, right? But with God, there's also another option to give yourself praise, to have a powerful vision of truth that is life giving for
Yep.
yourself. So it's kind of like I feel like creating vision and speaking life into your life are
Mhm.
the same, really. I mean, it's just having it for a future vision.
Right.
And then what's the scripture he talks about? Oh, my plans, like my plans for you, I plan to prosper you and not,
Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
yeah. So, and not, what is it? Not, my plans are to prosper you. I think it's in Psalms, but
Yep.
um,
For a hope and a future.
yes, yeah, right. So that's like
Yep.
the fruit of what he's doing. And the plan is the vision. Does
Right.
that seem right? Okay. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. So tell us about how. So how what when we start putting pen to paper, have a blank piece of paper, how do we get inspired to know what to begin
So,
writing?
I mean, my very, very first thing is spending time and really asking the Holy Spirit to,
Mhm,
just impart what he wants you to know, what you should be focusing on. Because sometimes what we focus on, I was just reading Steve Jobs' letter that he had written on his deathbed, and
mm,
it really, really hit me. What we focus on every day, in the long-term scheme of things, as important as it may seem, just really isn't that important. And if
it's
you
true.
talk to anyone, that is at that point in life where they're, getting close to crossing over,
Hmm.
I'm telling you, it's, you realize that so many things that we struggle over and stress over, it's just not that important. So
Yeah.
I
Hmm.
think spending that time in prayer, and really asking for the Holy Spirit just to kind of impart your own personal vision, because we all have different goals. I think also keeping in mind and looking at personal goals, spiritual aspirations,
Mm,
like where are you now? And
hmm.
you have to really take an honest look at where are you today.
Mm,
It's
hmm.
easy to kind of gloss over that, because sometimes we don't necessarily want to look at areas that we're not necessarily progressing in or growing in. It can be kind of a scary thing sometimes, but the more honest that we can be with ourselves,
Hmm.
the better starting point we give ourselves to be able to do that.
Hmm.
In the workshop that I had mentioned that I'm putting together, I have delved a lot into overcoming fear and doubt, and I know
Mm,
you talked a lot about that, and I've learned so much from listening
mhm,
to you talk about, how we doubt ourselves and how that affects us, and that is something that I think is an important thing to look at as well. Really asking for guidance on, okay, what am I
mm,
really afraid of? And being able to be honest, there's nothing wrong with admitting if you have a fear of social judgment, you know, put that on paper and acknowledge that, because
mm,
once you
mhm,
acknowledge that, you have a start
mm,
point to work towards.
mhm.
You don't acknowledge what you don't acknowledge, you can't
Yeah.
with.
Or even just having the awareness of that. Sometimes we don't even are aware of that
Right.
until something in life makes you aware of it.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
just, and then acknowledging and writing it down, that's really
Yeah.
powerful in order to
Yeah.
start moving forward. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's
Mm,
where if we spend time in prayer and meditation,
mhm,
that's where we allow God to reveal these things to us. And a lot of times my morning walks is when excuse me, I will be kind of in prayer and listening to worship music, and all of a sudden something will come up that I think, in a lot of cases, the way that the world is right now,
mm,
there's so much fear, there's so much confusion, that I think that we can kind of be all over the place. And spending that quiet time is where, it gives us, well, it gives God the ability to talk to us and tell us, okay.
mm,
So I've learned a lot about myself just in taking that time, making myself take that time, because it's a
mhm.
discipline. It's not easy for me at all to do, because I'm go, go, go.
Right.
So
Just to slow down and kind of, yeah, take a minute to listen and build the foundation of your day
right,
on
right.
that. Yeah, it's such, and it completely changes the trajectory of your day when you can step
Yeah,
out of yourself and into God. Like I was telling you earlier, it's such a powerful thing, and your day is so much better. Not
yeah,
perfect. I mean, obviously we live in a fallen world, but you're free
yeah,
and under God's on His path, then
yeah,
it's
yeah,
usually turns out pretty good. So
yeah,
okay, so now when we're ready to write, so we creating spending time with the Lord, getting some inspiration,
yeah.
some idea. So what are we actually writing? Are we actually writing down a vision for ourselves? Or are we writing down like just writing a letter to yourself as you are currently?
Yeah. And it really can be whatever you want it to be and whatever you
Okay.
need for it to be.
Okay.
It's kind of almost like along the lines of a vision board with, putting down your spiritual goals, I think there's a lot of different aspects. I know for me personally, when I've done my letter, I talk a lot about people who are influencing me right now. That's something that really stood out to me in my letter that I'd written myself, from when I graduated from high school, is how important people are in our lives.
Mm,
In looking back and reading that, even though I wasn't thinking about that at the time, I was looking back thinking, wow, that
hmm,
teacher was someone who really impacted me. And
mm-hmm,
so I think, part of looking at our future self is, that's kind of the next step, is asking the right questions. So
mm,
the questions we ask ourselves are, and others, are the most important. I think it's one of the most important things in life in general. What
mm-hmm,
you ask yourself is what you're focusing on, right?
mm-hmm,
Um, and the more you can drill down on the questions that you're asking, that's
mm-hmm,
been, one of my number one goals that I've set for myself, is ask better questions.
mm-hmm,
In order to ask better questions, we have to listen,
mm-hmm,
and because I've really struggled with ADHD,
mm-hmm.
my ability to listen hasn't been the best. And so I've had to focus on that, but it's also listening to ourselves.
Mm,
What's your gut telling you, And
mm,
that's something that I've discounted for many different reasons in my life. But it's like when you listen to yourself and you
mm,
listen to God, and then you can listen to people that are around you, you find that, okay, these people have been really significant in my life.
mm,
That's something that I put in my letter. You know, Pay attention to who you're spending time with, because
mm,
that's who you're
mhm.
going to become.
That's so true. That is so true. I know. And then so how does that, us writing a letter, we were talking a little bit about emotional IQ
Mhm.
earlier. How does that tie into helping us develop our emotional IQ? Is this part of the process or is it
It,
separate?
it, it really is a part, and it's part of why I've become really obsessed with emotional intelligence. And by the way, even in the corporate, because the company I work with deals more with corporate things, which you can tell I'm being pulled in kind of another direction because I love people, I love women, and I love encouraging, women to become more of who they were designed to be and meant to be, just like what you're committed to. But in the corporate world, EQ is something, testing EQ through the psychometrics is almost replacing a lot of the other types of
Mm,
testing or types of things that have taken place with people who are hiring. So getting familiar with EQ and
mhm,
learning about your own emotional intelligence is extremely important, because going forward, even, in the corporate America, that's really what they're looking more for,
mm,
is people who have a high EQ, that
mm,
are able to self-regulate, they're able to have self-awareness,
mm.
um, as well as, the ability to have empathy, which seems to be something that's becoming something we don't see as much as we would like to anymore.
That's true. Everybody's
Putting
in
it,
their own little space. Yeah, probably because of social
yeah,
media, we think it's like a false sense of community.
yeah.
It's like, and then we just kind of doing their own little thing. Yeah.
And the buzzword narcissism is
I,
everywhere
I
now.
seriously, I know
Yeah.
that is so true. I know. So
But
then, yeah, go ahead.
yeah, so to answer your question, it's it really involves understanding and managing your own emotions and how to make informed and thoughtful decisions.
Okay.
Um, and then kind of tying that into, looking at shaping your future and what you want your future to look like, as opposed to just, you know, kind of going with the flow and letting things kind of fall into place. It's being more purposeful.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where EQ will really come into play, especially with relationship management,
Yeah.
navigating social complexities and so many things, because I think so many people do have like a social anxiety, that
Mm,
so afraid of being judged. And, I think
mm-hmm.
we all, to a certain degree, almost everyone has a little bit of that. Sometimes it can be debilitating for some people. And,
Yeah.
looking at where your source of strength comes from, where your inspiration comes from, and then putting that into a plan for yourself for the future.
Yeah. I know. It's nice to be able to do that because I'm just thinking like with our culture, just mentioning that. So people are feeling so isolated. And even though we have so much social media and available things to commune with people,
Mhm.
they're not really getting that piece. Or people who are feeling like they have more social anxiety, they can get away with keeping it or preserving social anxiety because they can post a comment on a post that they didn't even know who posted it, but it struck their nerves.
Right.
And they type something out. And so it's kind of like hiding behind the wall of online, world,
Right.
online world.
Right.
Or they can just follow people on social media and feel like they're doing their part to get connected. But it's
Mhm.
not, it's maintaining their social anxiety. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? So
Exactly.
but
Well,
yeah,
and
but
it's
mhm.
so interesting, in schools, and I've been kind of delving into the whole bullying effect as well.
Oh,
And
yeah.
my grandkids are, that school age, and there's been a few issues. They've been homeschooled up until just this year, and
Okay.
and and dealing with, bullies. Even looking at that, it's like when you confront someone, 99% of the time they immediately retract and back down.
Yeah,
But
right.
you don't necessarily, know that until you develop that as a habit, and you have your own really strong, healthy boundaries.
Right.
Another thing that I know in my personal letter had a lot to do with boundaries, because
Mm,
I saw myself from the past
mhm.
looking at, not having great boundaries. And that's something that was surprising to me to look at, here and now, which was
Right.
back a while back, but my boundaries hadn't gotten a whole lot better. So that was something that I, had written to my future self. Um, just, having, I don't like the term, like, self-love and self-care.
Mhm,
It can be
mhm.
kind of new agey, and
Right.
you know, we're not supposed to elevate ourselves above God and the way that I was raised in a Christian home, not above others either. But you
Hmm.
do have to have self-respect. You do have to, have those boundaries in place. So
Hmm. Yeah.
other whole topic.
Yeah, no, it's true though. Yeah, that like a lot of those phrases and terms were thrown around a lot, like self-love and self-care. It's like, but it kind of puts you at the center of your own idol. Like it's all about me. I mean, but there's part of that. There is we I mean, I was thinking like biblically, like Jesus did take care of himself by sneaking away once in a while to get like a
Right.
refresher, right? For people.
Well, and
Yeah.
that's the whole thing, getting really
Uh-huh.
clear about what your purpose is. And that's a big
Mhm.
part of this too.
Mhm.
He knew who he was. He had
Mhm.
a very strong, obviously, self-identity. And
Right.
he, because of that, he
Mhm.
was able to have those boundaries to say, look, I'm going off to pray. I don't care how many people are waiting in line to talk to me. I'm going to go off at time to pray. Because it wasn't for himself. Like, I need
Right.
some me time. It was, I know what my purpose is, and
Mm.
in order to serve others the way that I want
Mm.
others, or have my purpose be what I know God meant for it to be, there are certain things, I always talk about, coming from the airline industry, I always talk about put the oxygen on yourself.
Mm.
We're trying to help others because
Mhm.
that's the only way that it can work. That's almost kind of God's law, that we have
Mhm.
to have, self-care to the point where we're able to help others as well.
Exactly. I mean, just really for not just for survival, but I mean, God wants us to have a good, amazing quality of life. So
Right.
it's like, and a lot of times, part of that great quality of life is putting others ahead of yourself. And how
Yep.
much joy do you get when you give somebody a special gift and you're like, I can't wait till they open it. Like, I want them to open it today, but I have to wait
Yeah.
another week for
Yeah.
their birthday or something, or just doing something out
Right.
of the blue, something special for someone, or just complimenting somebody randomly that can
Yeah.
totally change the trajectory of their day. Right. So it's like, but doing that, I was talking about this actually earlier in a course I was doing this morning, but how, you reap what you sow, like giving what you're giving more of to people, you most likely receive back that same thing. I'm just like,
Exactly.
there's probably a scientific principle about that too, right? Or just gardening, you reap what you sow. If you're going to put out seeds for bell peppers in your garden, you're going to get bell peppers, right?
Yep.
So
Yep.
it's that same idea. But yeah, just fulfilling part of self-care is giving. I guess that's what I'm saying, is like giving of yourself to others, but with a joyful heart. And even
Yep.
like, we talk about tithing, like giving or just giving to God what you feel is what you want to give.
Yep.
Um, yeah, it's so powerful as part of the self-care
Yeah, that's
journey.
all ties into the whole trust factor that we were talking about too.
Mm,
By giving, we are trusting. We are trusting, that we're doing what we're supposed to do in giving, that God is, going to be true to his word. And
mhm,
another part of, I just thought about part of the workshop that I'm doing. Another one of my favorite scriptures, I basically kind of built something, part of it around, which is Hebrews 10:24.
mm,
And it's, let us consider how we may spur one another on to love and good deeds. And it's like,
mhm,
what we're putting out there,
mhm.
what we're planting is coming back to us. And then what we're putting out there is, that's our fruit. That's our fruit.
Uh-huh.
That's
It's like
that.
it's a cyclical thing. It just, and then people, the more you do things for people, the more they are compelled or inspired to do something else for somebody else because it felt so good for them to receive
Yeah.
such an amazing thing.
Yep.
So yeah, so for me, that's yeah, and I think we've kind of made that conclusion together. That's self-care is
Hmm.
giving. Like you said, Jesus, when he was here, he came as a servant, not to be served, but there was so much mutual giving and receiving just because it was a natural, probably God's law. That's just how it works. So
Yeah. Yeah. Just
that's
like you
it.
said with the gift giving, it's amazing how,
Uh-huh.
sowing into someone else, or even hearing that somebody will come back and say, what you said to me that day, even though it's nothing to you, it's a drop in the bucket, they'll come back and say that, completely changed the
Yes.
trajectory of my day and my
Yes.
month just by what you said.
Uh-huh.
And it's like,
Uh-huh.
our words are so important, our actions
Mm-hmm.
are even more important. But, a lot of times we're so in the moment that we don't necessarily think about what we say, or, the fact that there's people watching us always.
Yeah. And that's what this morning I share a testimonial of I was working on, I was telling you earlier, trust, like this last week I was working on learning about trust, understanding trust, and what it means under God,
Mm.
and in His realm. But I was posting a testimonial this morning about this amazing um, manifestation of trust that I experienced in Christ, that I really understood what He means by that, and how, so sharing that testimony, I felt like I really needed to, so people could start to understand. And I thought, Kayla, I'm going to share this. And there's people already commenting, wow, you have no idea how much this means to me, how much I needed this word today. And so
Mhm.
that's part of it. I'm like, okay, what hard things I was dealing with, but then watching God bring me out of it in such a powerful way and impactful way. I
Right.
know somebody else is going through, like, I'm not the only one, right? Even though it feels like it in the moment. So
Well,
yeah, so just
that
sharing
gives
that
so
way.
much meaning
Hmm.
to our trials, big or small, when you
Yes.
stop and think about the
Yes.
fact that, okay, you know, this
Hmm.
is something that I went through for a reason,
Hmm.
or am going through for a reason, and
Hmm.
it could be a multitude of different things. And the thing is that it's awesome when we can hear that from somebody, when you get that feedback,
Hmm.
it's amazing. But we don't always get that. But we have to remember, even if we don't ever hear from somebody, we're
Hmm.
still impacting.
Yes.
How
Yes.
we choose to live our lives
Yeah.
on a daily basis, we're
Uh-huh.
impacting people in a
Yeah, I mean,
major.
just having it's your faith and obedience, and sharing it, and
Right.
for whatever, however God's going to use it, or just
Yep.
me being bold enough to be like, this is what God did for me, because I can't help but share something so amazing, like biblically, somebody got healed, they couldn't wait to share, like, this is
Mhm.
incredible, and
Right.
everybody else watching, it's like, how could
Yep.
you? I don't know. You could not. I guess it just depends on your choice. But
Yeah.
but for me,
Yeah.
it's like one of those things. It's like I can't even help, but share. This is just kind of the way it is. Okay, so we better
That's
better.
one thing I've always loved about you, and in going through
Mhm.
all of your materials that you and in the trainings that you have put together. I love your transparency
Mhm.
because
Mhm.
there again, in this day and age, and with so much video and so much being online and YouTube and
Mm.
it's really easy to have that false persona that trying to present what everybody what we think people want to see, the whole
Mhm.
Facebook type
Yeah,
identity.
ideal. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's
Mhm.
like I love that you're transparent, because the more transparent someone is, I think the more people want to listen, because it's
Mm.
like, okay, now that really resonates with me, because you're being real. You're not
Mhm.
just trying to sell me something that,
Mhm.
you're not even practicing yourself. And,
Right. Right. Or
that's
telling them how they're doing it wrong and how I know how to do it right.
right, right.
But it's like, I might know how to do it right, but I also made a lot of mistakes to figure it out. This
Yeah,
is like,
yeah.
this
And
was
being real
real
about
life.
that. People need to
Yeah.
hear that, it's like
Yeah.
we're all on the same journey and have the same struggles. And so if you can
Mm.
identify with someone else's struggles,
Mm.
then you're going to listen to what made a difference, and know
Mm.
that it's real and it's true, as
Mm.
opposed to, okay, check these boxes.
I know. Or doing it just to make money or to be famous or influential. It's like,
Right,
well,
right,
that'll happen with a genuine spirit at
right.
some point, if that's God's plan for you. But yeah, in the same way. Yeah. Okay. Well, we better wrap up. So, trying to think of what else. So, as far as like what you're doing now, are you working with anybody publicly? Like if somebody wanted to work on their emotional IQ or get some help with creating this vision letter, is that something that you would help with? I'm not sure where you're at with.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Anyone can email me at Cheryl, it's Cheryl, at
Hmm.
balancedworklife.com.
Okay, I'll add that to the post or the video.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, I can do the EQ testing, which is a great place to start. And I'm more than happy to work with anybody who is wanting to do, and that's part of, I do a lot of volunteer services
Mhm.
and volunteer work. And so that's something that I'm happy to work with anybody that just needs kind of a starting place, or some basic coaching. The company I work for does corporate coaching, but
Okay.
I do personal coaching on
Okay.
the side, as far as just with EQ
Okay.
type
Okay.
training and things like that. So
And
yeah,
so the main idea for getting the support with understanding your emotional intelligence is how you understand yourself, but also how you interact with other people.
right.
Okay. All right,
Right.
just wanted to
Yeah.
make sure that
And
was a
motivation. And that's what the
motivation. Yeah,
psychometric
that's a big one.
testing is will show you kind of where your motivation basically affects all of the other aspects of EQ. So your self-regulation,
Mhm.
and it's dealing with yourself, but also dealing with others. And so
Mm-hmm.
motivation kind of affects all of it. And so it basically gives you scores and shows you each one of those, along with your motivation.
Okay.
Um, and so kind of all plays hand in hand.
So then, as far as motivation, so once you start getting the answers to those things, are you also helping with how to grow or strengthen those areas that need to be strengthened?
Absolutely.
Okay, okay.
Absolutely.
That's, I mean, yeah,
And
it's one
that's
thing to know, but it's another thing to like, okay, well, what do I do with
right,
it now that I know this
right. Yeah,
information?
and that's
Yeah.
basically all kind of part of
Hmm.
the debriefing portion of that psychometrics analysis.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, that you did that. Yeah, that's right. We did it together. Yeah,
Yeah.
you get to do the testing and then discuss it and then
Yeah.
learn
And
some
then and
ways.
then and then we can build coaching around that as well.
Oh,
So if it's
okay.
something that somebody wants, we can build coaching around that as well.
Okay. And this is all can be done on Zoom or in person or mainly Zoom. How do you
Yep,
do it?
typically Zoom is
Okay.
yeah. Yep.
Easiest way.
But yeah, and I can meet with anybody if they want to just get a little bit more information about it. That's
Okay.
more
Oh,
than
yeah.
happy to meet with anyone. And typically Zoom is the way that I do the meetings.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you so much for hanging out. This is so informative, and I really hope it helped a lot of you listening because this is such an integral part of what we're doing in our course group. Or if you just follow me on YouTube or any of my other interviews, this is huge. I mean, as you know, I'm really into understanding the why behind things and really helping people get to the root of what's going on. And this is just another tool that you can use to really understand yourself better and how you interact with the world and how God can grow you and your character even better every day. So, anyway, so thank you, Cheryl. That was really
Excellent.
interesting. And thank you for hanging out
Yeah.
with me. Yeah, so if you need to get in touch with her, I will post her email address. So if you want to get in touch with her, you can do that. And yeah, I think that's it. Anyway, thanks again. All right, everybody. See you soon. Bye.
Bye.